All right, everyone, we're going to go over characterization today. Excuse my voice is a little hoarse. It's the end of the day, and I've done a few of these so far. So, excuse my voice is kind of leaving me here. So, characterization, you'll have the access to this window note inside of Schoology. It'll open inside a commie and let you kind of add to these sections here. I want you to pause the video and write down the different parts of this as I go through the slideshow with you. Okay, you'll also have access to this slideshow. You can go through it on your own and grab the information out of it that you need, or you can follow along and I'll be going through every part of it for you. Okay, since we don't have a group here, I want you to just think about three words that you would use to describe yourself. Maybe brave, funny, thoughtful, lazy. What words would you use to describe yourself? Okay, those words that you use to describe yourself are called character traits. Okay, so if a character is brave in a story, we say that that character has the character trait of being brave. Authors assign character traits to every single character, and the question is, how do they get those character traits across? Now, here's where we get to that. Okay, maybe not yet. So, what is the purpose of a character trait? Character traits make things more realistic. If you can come up with 3 words to describe yourself, then why shouldn't you be able to come up with 3 words to describe a character? They help us see the differences between characters. The good guys are always going to be the nice ones. The bad guys are always going to be the evil ones. And they make characters more interesting. If we had a character who was lazy, that wouldn't be much fun to read the story about them. So I want you to think about Harry Potter, if you know him. What character traits would you give to Harry Potter? If you don't know him, just look at the picture and think, what does this kid look like? Maybe you said brave. Okay. Maybe you could say he's agile. He's kind of small and skinny. Right. Now let's think about his friends. What do these people in the picture look like? If you know the story, this is a little easier. If not, just kind of think about, what do the people in this picture look like? Maybe friendly. Maybe smart. Okay, now here's our first box for our window notes. Characterization. How do authors tell you about a character? The process of giving character traits is called characterization. Write that down on your window notes under definition. We have 2 types of characterization. We have direct and indirect. Now, direct, of course, means something that happens as a direct cause of something else. If I push you, you fall down. The direct action of me pushing knocked you over. Whereas if I push a giant domino and that domino knocks you over, then I haven't directly pushed you down. I have indirectly knocked you down. All right, moving forward here into our second window in our notes, we have direct characterization. Just like I was talking about with the definition of direct, you could probably have guessed. Direct characterization is when the author tells you exactly what the character is like. This is the easiest way to give characterization. It's also the most obvious because the author isn't dancing around the facts. Okay, they're not trying to hide anything from you. They just come right out and say it. On your example under your window notes, it tells you she was happy. Comes right out and say it. Okay, let's do a few examples here. using these different modes of characterization, we're going to do 3 examples, and they're all going to follow this same character. So we're just going to give him the name of the little boy, and we're going to give him the character trait afraid. We're going to say that he's 10, and we're going to try to get across what's on his mind. And he currently thinks that there's a monster in his closet. Okay, so take a second to think, using direct characterization, coming right out and saying it, no fancy dancing around, just telling us what we decided on with this boy. How would you tell the reader that? Think about it for a second, pause, and then I'll show you how I would do it. I would say the little boy was still afraid of monsters even though he was already 10. Coming right out and saying that he's afraid, coming right out and saying that he's 10. He thought there might be one in his closet as his mom tucked him into bed. There we're just straight up telling the readers he thinks there's a monster in his closet. We've solved every single one of those things, that we've done everything that we set out to do. Okay, so that's direct characterization. It's very easy, very obvious. The third window in our notes is indirect characterization. Indirect characterization is when the author tells you what the character is like without ever saying their character trait. So our chosen trait in the example is afraid. So I was able to say the boy was afraid of monsters. Now when we do our examples with indirect characterization, I'm not allowed to use the word afraid or anything like it. I'm not allowed to say terrified or scared or anything that means afraid. In another example, instead of saying that a person is mean, we might have that character push someone into a locker. Now, instead of directly telling you that that person is mean, the author has used them pushing someone into the locker to kind of tell you that they're mean indirectly. So under your window for indirect, we have 2 types. Type 1, I want you to write down through dialogue. Dialogue is the words that a character says. One way to use indirect characterization is to just have the characters tell you what they're like. For example, someone who's sad might say, "Nobody likes me, everybody hates me, guess I'll go eat worms." And that is, of course, from the Winnie the Pooh character here, Eeyore, if you're familiar with that. So in this case, the character's trait is sad, and that is portrayed indirectly by having the character say those words rather than having the author say, Eeyore was a sad little donkey. Let's move back to our example of the little boy with the monster in his closet. Using dialogue now, and you're not allowed to use any variation of the word afraid, how would you tell us that this little boy thinks there's a monster and that he's 10 years old and that he's scared? How would you do it? Pause to think about it. You don't have to write this down anywhere. Here's how I would do it using dialogue. I would have the mother talking to this little boy, and then the boy can tell the mom that he's afraid. Here's what that would look like. "What's wrong, honey?" the mother asked as she tucked him into bed. "I'm afraid there might be a monster in my closet," the boy said with a frown. "Will you check for me, Mommy?" "Sweetie, you're 10 years old now. You shouldn't believe in monsters anymore." So this gets across everything that we set out to get across. We see that he's afraid, we see that he thinks there's a monster, and we see that he's 10 years old. Now, I cheated a little bit, you might be thinking. I said that I'm not allowed to use the word afraid. Well, I didn't. The boy did. There's the difference. I, as the author, can't use that word anymore. Otherwise, I would be using direct characterization. But the characters can still use that word. All right, let's look at a second type of indirect characterization. We have characterization through actions. We can learn about a character simply by watching the way that they act. If they do something brave, they are a brave character. So my question to you is, with this little boy, what can he be doing that would tell you he's afraid? Now this one, he's not talking, so there's no more workaround. We can't use the word afraid or anything similar to it. Scared, terrified, horrified, any of those words. All we can do is say what this boy is doing. If you were here for the point of view lesson, then what we want to do is write this in third person objective. So we're just saying what's going on. How would you do it? Here's what I would do. I would have the boy hiding under the covers. That's one thing that he can do. Another thing you could have him do is shake and shiver. You could have him scream. You could have him get out of bed and run into his mom's room. Here's what I would write. The boy's mom turned off the lights and said, "Good night, I love you." As soon as she was gone, the boy hid his face under the covers, nervously watching the closet door. Now we're still getting across the idea that he's afraid, but we're doing it indirectly by showing him hide his face under the covers. Having him watch the closet door tells us that he thinks that there's a monster inside. Why else would he be hiding under the covers and watching the door? If he was just hiding under the covers and pulling out a flashlight and a book, that wouldn't tell us that he's afraid of monsters. That would tell us that he's staying up past bedtime. But, of course, we're looking for a different character trait. All right, fourth box on our window notes. This is a method for finding a character trait while you read something. This is called the STEAL method. Okay, STEAL stands for speech, thoughts, effects on others, actions, looks, and that's it. Mr. Sullivan can't spell. Speech, thoughts, effect on others, actions, and looks. So let's go through these one at a time. I want you to write them down on your window notes. Speech is what is the character saying. This is our indirect characterization through dialogue we already learned about. What does the character say? How do they speak? Do they speak with a southern accent? That might tell you that they're not the sharpest tool in the shed. Sorry, anyone raised in the South. Next is thoughts. It's very similar to speech. If we ever are told exactly what the characters are thinking, what does their thoughts tell you about their character trait? If they're thinking, boy, I can't wait to get home and eat some candy, then that might tell us that they're maybe a little on the heavy side. Effects on others. This is where we look at what's happening to other people and how they think about the character. If character 2 says to character 1, "Hey, I think you need to do more work," then we know that character 1 is kind of lazy. So what is revealed through the character's effect on others? How do other characters feel about them? Our next is actions, which we've of course already talked about. What does the character do? How does the character behave? And finally, looks. What does the character look like? How do they dress? If the character is dressed in a suit of armor, then you know immediately that they're a knight. And just by knowing that they're a knight, you probably know that they're brave. If they're dressed with pants hanging down around their ankles and a giant gold chain, then you might know that they're a SoundCloud rapper and their music probably isn't any good, right? You can tell a lot by just how somebody looks. So, which of these is the best if you were actually writing it? The answer is none of them, but if you were ever to write a story, you should, of course, start with actions, then dialogue, then direct. So that is very useful advice for any of my aspiring writers out there, but it's also useful advice for us as we try to find the character traits. The first thing we should look for is the A in our steal. Okay, that's going to be the thing that most authors use most often. And we're going to end it there. So if you have any questions, make sure you come ask me. Don't forget to turn in your window notes, and I'll see you in class.